As we get started, we're continuing our journey through a generous life or generous living, and we're kind of in that transition period between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so we get to be thankful, and now we're moving into that generosity season, and really just an opportunity to be able to show that thanks to everybody. And so this last week, or last couple weeks ago, we were able to go see our family, not during Thanksgiving, but the week before, and just catching up with some old friends. And one guy in particular, I worked for him and worked with him first at a company that I worked for when I started, when I was apprenticing as a plumber. I worked with him, and he was a California guy that moved to Idaho, so we always gave a hard time about that. But this guy was unique and different, and really as I was thinking about this conversation we had, having breakfast with him, being able to go back and review how much of an impact he was to me. And I tried, we had the awkward waltz where it's like, I'm paying for breakfast, no, I'm paying for breakfast, no, you know what I mean? But he won, so I let him. But anyway, really just wanting to thank him. And one thing I try to do, especially during Thanksgiving, because it just triggers my mind, is I try to go back through people that really impacted me and just really be specific about being thankful. It's so easy to get entitled and be ungrateful. So many people have impacted the person you are, good or bad. And so just really being intentional on that. And so just being able to have breakfast with him and thinking about my early 20s. This was a young Shawn, a young rookie, a young guy that really didn't know what he was doing. Pre-married to Tina, so she's smoothed a lot of the edges off of me. And but before that, he was a guy that really a couple things that come to my mind is he was always very generous. One thing that he did, we called him Dad because he just took care of us. We'd work with him, and he'd have a cooler full of drinks, and he'd just give us a soda or a pop, however you say it in your area, but a soda, Coke. He gave us that, and then he would also he was the kind of guy that was always willing to teach you and to show you. And truly, listen, he marked the way I view myself as a professional, view myself as an employee. He had that much of an impact, and really just always going back and to have him still in my life. He's not a pastor. He never pretends to be. A lot of these funny stories come to my mind. I don't want to embarrass. I don't want to say anything. But the idea is he was very impactful to me and helped shape me to be the man that I am today. And really, one of the reasons why I try to be generous to others is because how generous he was to me when I didn't know anything. And at the time I was learning, when I first got into plumbing, I couldn't read a tape measure. I never worked with tools. And so the patience he had, you would qualify him as the patience of Job, right? Like he was very, very kind. And one thing he said during this conversation, he's like, you had a desire to learn. And I'm just really grateful for that opportunity and what he means to me. And so as we think of that, his generous to me and me wanting to thank him really has sparked in me a desire to be generous to other people, him and many, many other people through my life. But he is one of those guys that really makes me want to make people feel welcomed and loved. And if you work with me, I want you to have a great time with me. I want us to get work done. That was one thing that we did. We got stuff done, but we also had a good time, and he made me feel welcomed and warm. And so that his generosity and his willingness to work with me has really shaped me to want to be generous to others, him and many others. And so I was starting to think about that. And one thing that you've seen those pay it forward loops, like you never really want to, this is Shawn talking in the flesh, okay? You never want to get stuck in one of those, right? Like you don't want to be the guy that stops where you're like, so I was reading an article where 900 at a Dairy Queen somewhere that they had 900 paid forward. So someone was paying for the last meal, right? So the guy drives up. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You drive up, you order something, you're like, I want to pay for the guy in the back, and so you pay for his meal. Can you imagine being the guy that stops that? No, I don't want to pay it forward. You're the guy. Funny enough, there's a guy that has Starbucks. It was an 11-hour Starbucks deal, and he made news. He was a Florida guy that stopped 11 hours paid forward Starbucks thing, and he's like, I tipped the barista $100, So he tried to justify that loop, right? But that's what happens is when you're thankful, and someone does something for you and you're thankful, there's an obligation, or you feel like we have to respond to be thankful or generous to somebody else, right? So someone's good to you, and you're like, man, I gotta show this. Funny, believe it or not, really, there's been research to this, and let me read this. It says, research shows that gratitude can also lead to generosity. In the sense, gratitude seems to prepare the brain for generosity. Perhaps this is why researchers who observed that grateful people give more. So if you're thankful, because what God's done or people have done for you, you're willing to do that. Our brains create a gratitude generosity loop. So when you're thankful, you're more generous. When you're thankful, and that kind of makes sense to me. It makes sense. We are thankful for the generosity shown to us, and that thankfulness inspires our own compassion and generosity. Gratitude is generosity in action. And so as we think about this season that we've walked through, last week Taylor did a great job of talking about how Jesus is that treasure. And really speaking from a Christian worldview, when you realize the value he's brought to your life and just your thankfulness for all that he's done for you, that does inspire us to be grateful because he's given everything. He gave his life for us. And so it really inspires us. And really my question for me is always like, why don't I do more? Like, why don't I do more? And then I think of the people, again, the God-given people that he put in your life that have been so generous through the years, through sickness and through difficulties and through struggles, just many, many people, and probably people we don't even know how generous they really were to us, but God has just been so good in that. And so it really, we should expect Christians and God's people to be generous, and really want to challenge Living Hope Church that we want to be a church that knows for our generosity and our intentional generosity, that we want to be a church that willing to look and listen for opportunities to use our time, talent, and treasure to bless others and be a blessing to others and give God the glory for that. The good news is as I was thinking about this, in 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul actually talks about this generosity loop. So not that research proves it, but the Bible actually teaches about this generosity loop and what it does and what it means. And really, we all have the opportunity to spark a change that could really cause people to pay forward what God has done for you and give God all the glory. Wouldn't it be amazing to be a part of something that you knew, that you influenced or impacted somebody's decision for Jesus because of your generosity, because of your gratitude to them? Like it just spurred a movement of God. I really think it could happen, and Apostle Paul really deals with this. This is in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, starting in verse 1. Now, the first part of this, the first 5 verses, Paul is prepping them and really prompting them to be prepared for an opportunity to give. And so as we read this, you're going to see Paul is really priming the pump, getting people ready. So what it is, just give it as a parent view. When you take your kids to an event and you're like, okay, listen, this is what's going to happen. And this is how you're going to behave. People are going to be there. You better not act up. So we had the pre-trip rule, right? And then the event happens. One of them didn't get the message clear. And so then there's the post-trip view, right? Like, what happened? We talked about this. That's what Paul's doing. He's like, look, I'm bragging about you. I'm boasting about you. I'm talking big talk about you. And now I want you to perform, like I said. And I'm going to give you a little warning just to prompt you to be on your best behavior. So let's read it. As he says, there's no need for me to write to you about this service to the saints, for I know your readiness, for which I boast about you to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. But I am sending the brothers so that our boasting about you may not prove empty in this matter, so that you may be ready as I said you would be. So he's like, you better be ready. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find out that you're not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you, for being so confident. So I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for the gift you have promised, so that it may be ready as a willing gift, not an extraction. So he's like, look, you guys said what you're going to do. I want to make sure you're going to do what you said you're going to do. And so this is a good, he's just coaching them in that way. And so a couple things I see here, I really see that when we think about generosity, notice that when someone's generous to you, it does a prompting in you, like, man, I should be more Generous to other, right? Isn't that awkward when so Christmas is coming, they give you a present, and you're like, oh, no. I didn't give you anything, right? Yeah, I didn't give you. You're not even on my top 25 list. How did you give me a present, right? There's a spark. You're like, oh, there's a prompt. And you're like, man, next year I'm going to get that guy a gift. Or when's your birthday, right? Like, again, maybe it's only me, but this is how I think, that prompting. So I think those promptings and urgings are necessary in generosity. Why? We are selfish people. We are selfish people, and I can even be more. I am a selfish individual, right? I like my tea a certain way. I like things done a certain way. I have high expectations, right? My wife says I'm a picky eater. I just like good, fine food, right? But anyway, I just want things. We're and I think about me. Funny thing, I was reading where most people, like 65% of people on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, buy presents for themselves. Right? And I won't make you raise your hand if you're guilty of that. I know I've got some new shoes coming, right? But again, it's a great deal. But the idea is that we think about ourselves. You never think when someone else gets a promotion, you don't think you have to train yourself or teach yourself to celebrate other people's win. You're like, what about me, right? What about me? Somebody else gets an advance, somebody else gets a new car, someone else gets, there's a tendency and a desire, and there's some area in your life where we want to think about us. And so that's why we have to be prompted. We have to be prompted. And sometimes we just miss those opportunities. We don't see the opportunities like others see. And so we have to be willing and open to look for those. So there's a prompting. And then the best gifts, the best generosity is when you prepare and you plan. Right? When you think about when someone's going to propose the big question, if they just like, hey, I found this in the Cracker Jack box, will you marry me? Like, that ain't gonna go so well, right? So if I'd like to see someone try it, see what happens, you know? But the more you plan, you get things kind of all set up, you know, what is that doing? That's sending signs that you matter now and that you're gonna continue this on. Now, you don't wanna go too big, because if you go too big, then you're setting the expectations way high for the other gifts, right? But the idea is really you wanna make some planning, some preparation. That's one thing that we've tried to do. My wife has been cursed with a December birthday, and that December birthday is the slash mark Christmas. We broke that mold. We have a birthday week and we have a Christmas week, and so we try to create an event or an experience, and we work really hard. The kids, it's nice to have your kids growing up because if it's a flop, it's like, well, the kids planned it, honey. We can't go wrong here. But so it's a good crutch. I'm learning this, and so, but actually, it cost me a lot more because they got good ideas, and so and all they have to say is, well, Dad didn't want to do that, and so it sets me up. But the idea is take some prompting, some preparation, and planning. Paul says, look, they're coming. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to say that you're going to do something. And I think as Living Hope Church, as we think about this from our view, you know, when someone shows up to Living Hope Church, we want to love them where they are. We want to walk with them where they are. We want to be ready. We want to be generous individuals. We want to really, truly be open and looking for those opportunities. So this is really a challenge. And so I love, he's saying, look, you said you're going to do this. There's a church that needs some help. I want you to step up to the plate and do what you say you're going to do. And that's the good thing about generosity is you get to make the choice. And then we go on to verses 6 through 9. And we see that really generosity comes from a joyful decision. I love what in verse 6 he says, the point is this. I love that. Like, he's so direct, right? Just, what do you really want, Paul? The point is this. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he's decided in his heart. A lot of times when we think of generosity, we get guilted, we get pushed, we get compulsive. He says, look, this gift is not, we want you to make your own decision. We want your generosity to come out of a heart of affection and love and thanksgiving. We don't want you to try to compete or compare to other people. We want you to be urged, prompted, provoked, like encouraged. But you make the decision what you're going to give. You have that decision. He says, we don't want you to do it reluctantly, and we don't want you to do it under compulsion because you have to. You know, think about the presents you give that you have to give. Usually it's like a cup, like, right? Like it's and so maybe I'm crushing, I'll be careful because I won't crush all your Christmas or birthday presents you're giving people, right? Or a picture of yourself, like all those things, right? Like those gifts, like there's high tier gifts or there's when you are compulsed, like I think about it as a kid, my mom's like, be nice to Susie or whoever, right? I won't name names. It's like, you really don't want to be nice. So you're like, here's a candy. And you give her like the nasty, butterscotch one or something you don't like. You're like, here you go. Here's a candy corn. Like, that's compulsion. Like, it's not really what you really want to do. This was really evident to me when I was in I think it was 4th grade. There was a girl that I liked that I thought she liked me, but I was way wrong and how I realized that is we got those Valentine things. I don't know if they still do this as kids. You got the little, well, my card had one candy, and then this guy next to me that she gave to was like full of candy. I got it was under compulsion. She had to give me one, and she didn't have to give him that much. It was very clear to me what you want to do. So generosity really needs to come out of a heart of gratitude and true desire. You can't fake it. Let me say that again. You can't fake it. Like, you can't fake it. And this next generation, you really can't fake it. Like, you have no poker face. Like, I'm just telling you. I worked around you enough, you don't got it. You have to actually, there's a generosity, there's an element, a reality, a truth that if you really love it, you're all in and you do it. And so he says, not really under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And there is a joy that comes with that giving, with when you're cheerful about it, when you're excited about it. Man, I actually love giving gifts far than getting them. I don't know what to do. When someone gives me a great gift, I don't even know what to say. It's like, well, you shouldn't. I don't know what to say, right? But when you have an opportunity to be on the other side and you're giving a gift, there's so much excitement to see their expression, their face, their excitement. It's unexpected. And so I just love that aspect. It says, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every work. I think really Paul's even pushing this. Generosity is a faith decision. It's a faith decision. I think you need to be a good steward of what God gives you. And I think you need to manage your money well, and I think you manage your time well, and I think you need to manage your talents well. But there needs to be a moment where you're like, wait, I ought to give this. And what he's saying is, look, God, you can't outgive God, is what he's saying. You can't be more generous than God. He says, so that having all sufficiency, let me go back, and God is able to make all grace abound to you. You don't think God can provide for you? As you see a need, as you see an opportunity, and you say, oh my gosh, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna maybe not buy 3 Starbucks in a row or whatever, right? This is gonna take some me time away or me treats away. I'm gonna have to actually sacrifice. That's where you start to see God take care of you in ways that you never thought. He's like having all sufficiency in all things at all times that you may abound in every good work. Really, Paul's saying God expects a cheerful giver. If you've been given a lot and you're thankful for what God's given, it should show out as an outcome of your life. If God's pouring into you, it should be coming out of you in some ways or another, right? And he says, as is written, he has distributed freely and he has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. God will take care of you. I love this, the really idea when it comes to generosity, you have a choice. You have a choice. It's you and God and you and that individual. It's up, you get to make that decision. It doesn't have to be based on what other people are doing. You and God, I'm so thankful that Paul wrote this to this church. And so, because when it comes to generosity, well, you want to create bitterness, give things you don't really want to give, right? Just that creates bitterness. It creates like, you'll see them enjoy it, and you'll be like, But you have the freedom to give it. And so I just encourage you. Now, you not giving it, it reveals you. One of the things that I've had to grow in is my wife loves to, I love blizzards from Dairy Queen, and my wife doesn't want a full one. And so I'd buy one. I was like, do you want one? She's like, no. And I'm like, great, I get my own. And then she's like, I'll just take a bite. You could have bought one. I would have bought you one. You could have got your own flavor. It's like, I don't want to share. I want my own. But what does it do? That reveals me. Look, one ice cream scoop, like I don't need another scoop of ice cream, right? I can survive without another scoop, but it just shows who I am. So generosity, it does reveal who we are, and it does reveal what we really love. And so as we move on, then this is where the spark becomes the loop. Imagine being able to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. That's what Paul's saying. Look, as you give sacrificially, as you give in faith, as you give in service to others, you could be a part of something bigger than yourself. He says, now, he who supplies the seed to the sower and the bread for food will also supply the increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. He's using we don't really think this way, but back in the day, if you were to give your seeds, or you're giving, like you think about the harvest, that's really by faith, right? Because the seeds that you have is for the next year. You're really prepping for the next year. You really have to be careful how you manage that. And so Paul's really using that terminology, is that this should be a faith decision. And he's saying, and you can trust that God will take care of you as you trust God in this. He says, you will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. So God blesses you, not just to bless you. God blesses you to be a blessing to other people. And so he says, and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. So you could be the spark to see an answered prayer from somebody else. Do you believe that? Like, isn't that amazing? That somebody may have a need and have an opportunity, and you could actually be a blessing, an answer to prayer, a need. And when those moments happen, I'm telling you, they're like, thank God you came. Thank God you helped us. And what happens? He says, the result will be thanksgiving to God, which then could translate to them being generous to somebody else. I've read many stories, and I've actually seen it lived out in real life, where people will have, like churches will have food, toy drives or those kind of things. And there was a story where I was reading about a poor family that they didn't have any money. They were very poor, and so they decided to, what are they going to give? They started thinking of other people, like, man, what can we give this another poor family? And so they saved up a bunch of money and gave all these, they didn't really have it, but they gave it because they couldn't imagine some family not having Christmas, and so they wanted to bless them. And so Christmas Eve came, and there was a knock on the door, and the church gave them the gift that they had given other people, because they didn't say they were being generous, because they couldn't imagine somebody being that way. And so as we think about generosity that results in thanksgiving to God, this service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, so you're doing something well, but also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. That you could actually have a part in people praising God by your generosity. I don't know about you, but that just makes me excited. Like, I could be a part of somebody's loop of generosity, that I may have an opportunity to influence somebody, that they would begin to live a life of generous living to others, and to be a blessing with time and talent and treasure by my generosity. And that could, think about that could go really on forever, until Jesus comes back, right? And so he says, of overflowing expression to God, thanks to God, by their approval of this service, they will glorify God because of your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ and the generosity of your contribution for them and all others, while they long for you and pray for you because of the surpassing grace of God upon you. Thanks be to God for his inexpressible gift. And so as we see this, really, this is where the loop begins. What happens is someone generously so you thank God for the generous gift God's given you. And so whatever you have, where you're like, man, I want to give. So you give it generously to somebody else, and then they get it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I thank you, Lord. And they're like, man, God has blessed me so much. And then they start to give it to somebody else. And then that person says, oh, Lord has blessed me so much, and thank you. Now I want to show God thanks by giving it to somebody else, and see how this could actually become a generosity loop that goes on and on and on and on. And that's why Paul's warns them and plans them and preps them and says, listen, do what you say you're going to do. Do it out of a heart of glad and just cheerfulness. Be glad that you get to be a part of what God's doing. And as you give generously with your time, talents, and treasure, really thank the Lord for his opportunity for you to be submissive to what he wants you to do, and that he gave you an opportunity to give it, that you have enough to give, or you have more than enough to give, or even if it's by faith, that you give in faith knowing that God can do greater things than you understand. I'm telling you, you can't outgive God. So generosity sparks gratefulness, and gratefulness fuels generosity. And so as we think about this, I love he finishes it this way. He says, thanks be to God for his inexpressible gift. I think as God's people, and really even as Living Hope Church, we've seen God do so many good and amazing things through this church and change people's lives, really. And we've seen life change in a real way. We've seen God grow up leaders and really preparing them to go out. We see God calling leaders into ministry, and so we have opportunity to be a part of what God is doing. I also think of if I just go back to the very basics, and I just think about where God found me when he found me. He has been so generous to me. I owe him. I'm just so thankful. So thankful for who God's put in my life, when God's put them in my life. And even the people that I'm like, why'd you put that person in my life? God used them to grow me, to mold me, and to help me be the man that I am today. And again, he's continuing doing that over and over again. And so as I think about my life, wouldn't it be amazing if we, as God's people, began to think, okay, instead of thinking about us alone, we just came to church and we're like, who can we bless today? God, you've given me so much. You've been so good to me. I think it would change everything about us. It would change the culture. It would really radically shift because we would be known as a church. And really, I think that's our desire, is to be known a church that's generous, that's grateful and glad and thankful. And because of how God's been good to us, we can be a part of somebody else's story and be a blessing to them. And so I've seen that over and over and over, and I'm just so grateful for that. And again, God has been so good to me, and because of his goodness, I want to be generous. What's sad to me, on my side, is how I have to be continually prompted, keep it up. Why? Because I get hurt. That's what causes it. We get hurt. We get our feelings hurt. We don't get what we thought happened. It doesn't turn out the way we expected. And so we're like, well, the outcome didn't come out the way we wanted it, so I'm not going to do that again. I think generosity really doesn't worry about the outcome. Generosity worries about the opportunity. And so we want to be people of opportunity. And so I thank the God. He's like, thanks be to God for his inexpressible gift. And so as we conclude really the Thanksgiving season of gratitude and really generosity, maybe this morning as you pray, just be grateful for what God's doing. And as you really lubricate the will and get the idea of getting to what does it mean to start to be generous in my life? Where are some areas where I could be more generous? Do I have some time to spare in some areas? Do I have some opportunities, some talents, some gifts that I could give? Or maybe just start giving to the Lord and trusting the Lord with your financial stewardship of your money. Just say, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to put you first in my life. I'm going to give, and I'm going to be generous in my giving. I'm going to let you do, God, what you want to do in and through my life, because I trust you, and I'm so thankful for what you're doing in my life that I want to serve you. Let's pray. Jesus, we love you. We thank you so much for your grace, your goodness, your generosity, and your care. I thank you for the opportunity to be able to really just brag on you for all the good that you've done. And Lord, really, truly, like Paul with the church, I can brag on Living Hope Church. I know what we've done for people. I know how we walk with people in life and share the hope in Christ. I know how we are committed to being intentionally generous to others. God, I thank you for the people that you've placed in this church that are really sacrificial and kind and really looking for those opportunities. I pray, God, that you would continue to work in and through us, help us to grow in this area. I pray for maybe someone this morning that really recognize that you're a conviction on their heart, that, Lord, they've got hurt in some areas, some wound that's caused them to focus on themselves a little more, that they forgot all the gifts that you've given. I pray that you would give them courage and faith to trust you again and allow you to lead them in this way. We thank you so much. We also pray for the person this morning that maybe just needs to recognize the gift that you've given, that you gave your son to die on the cross for them, that you gave it so inexpressible, that you sacrificed everything. We thank you that generous gift to us, and I pray that we would respond in service to others and love to others, that we would share the hope that we have in you because of what you gave to us. We're so very grateful. We're so thankful for what you do. And I just love you, Jesus. Praise you this morning. And I ask you, God, as we sing to you, we just give you the glory in all that we do. If I'll be in the back there, and if you have some questions or just want some prayer, I'll be more than happy to do that. In Jesus' name.